The written history of Madagascar began with the Arabs, who established trading posts along the northwest coast by at least the 10th century and introduced Islam, the Arabic script, used to transcribe the Malagasy language in a form of writing known as Sorabi, Arab astrology, and other cultural elements. The Arabs also contributed to the blood mixture that today forms the Malagasy people. As masters of the entire African coastline, they repeatedly sent numerous migrations to the island, using the Comoros Islands as stopovers. Their traces can still be found along all the coasts, although it is doubtful that they ever penetrated far inland, since their colonies were founded mainly for commercial purposes. The Arabs primarily bought slaves, especially Hova slaves from the center of the island for the Indian Ocean markets. They were never able to convert the indigenous population to Islam, but they did manage to introduce some Muslim practices into local customs, which became widespread across the island. These included circumcision, abstaining from eating pork, and aversion of dogs. These customs led some early European travelers to wrongly believe that several tribes followed the doctrine of Muhammad. European contact began in 1500, when the Portuguese sea captain Diogo Dias sighted the island, while participating in the Second Armada of the Portuguese India Armadas. In 1506, the Portuguese failed in their attempts to destroy Arabantaleatra settlements in northern Madagascar despite violent raids led by Tristão da Cunha and Afonso de Albuquerque. Portuguese efforts of Christianization there also failed when their missionaries were massacred by natives. The Portuguese then resorted to the slave trade, buying slaves from the Arabs or Antaleatra when they did not acquire them directly through deceit or violence. When the enterprise of colonization in the northwestern Madagascar was undone, the Portuguese directed their ambition toward the southeastern coasts. In 1548, the Portuguese made an unsuccessful attempt to establish a settlement in the Bay of Ranafatsi or Galleons Bay in Anasi. The expedition ended in tragedy when Portuguese sailors and missionaries were attacked and massacred by the Antananarivo people. The few survivors sought refuge in a stone house they had constructed and managed to defend themselves. In retaliation, they launched frequent raids on nearby villages, burning homes and demanding ransoms from local inhabitants until they were rescued by Portuguese ships. At the same time, another violent incident occurred in the Maritime region, where 80 Portuguese settlers were killed in a separate massacre by the locals. These tragic events likely discouraged further Portuguese expeditions to Madagascar for several decades. During this period, Portugal came under the rule of Spain, which focused primarily on its colonies in the Americas and the lucrative Spice Islands. As a result, Madagascar, seen as less economically valuable, was largely neglected. Substantial Portuguese activity on the island did not resume until the early 17th century. The Portuguese, who had not yet founded any establishment in Madagascar, yet fervently desired to do so through evangelization. In 1613, they found their wishes nearly realized when Andriandromaca, the son of the king of Fanzir Andriatsiambani, having lately forged friendly relations with the Portuguese, arrived in their city of Goa as a hostage. The king agreed to send his son Andriandromaca to Goa, while 2 missionaries and 4 Portuguese stayed as hostages on Santa Cruz, near St. Lucas. The king gave Santa Cruz to the missionaries to build a church. The young prince from Fanzir was treated kindly in Goa by Viceroy Geronimo de Azevedo. He was educated by Jesuit priests and baptized. He promised that, if he could return to his homeland, he would convince his father to accept an alliance with the Portuguese and to adopt Christianity. People believed he would keep his promise. In 1615, the viceroy prepared 4 large ships with around 100 soldiers and 4 Jesuit missionaries. The mission's goal was to spread the Christian faith in Fanzir. The fleet left Goa with high hopes. However, less than a year later, the ships returned. The mission had failed. The Jesuit priests advised leaving because the people of Fanzir had not welcomed them. The king, persuaded by the ambiances, priests completely changed his attitude towards the Portuguese. He even forbade his subjects to give or sell any food to the foreigners. This left the Portuguese in a desperate situation. One of the missionaries soon died, and another, along with 6 companions, quickly left on a Portuguese ship to return to India. The new failure of the expedition from Goa, added to others like it, discouraged Portugal. Seeing Madagascar only as a graveyard for its soldiers, Portugal decided to abandon it for good. This left the island open for other nations to try, at their own risk, to conquer it. At that time, the English and the Dutch were competing for control of the Indian Empire. From 1618 to 1640, these two Protestant nations tried to establish rival settlements on various parts of the island and nearby islands. However, their colonization efforts, which were not very serious, ended in ruins and abandonment. The Dutch, who settled on the east coast near Antananarivo Bay and Sainte Marie, died of malaria or were killed by the Malagasy people. In 1646, out of 140 settlers led by John Smart to St. Augustine Bay, now Toliara, only 63 survived. The others died from things like disease or hunger, like the fate of the Portuguese in Antananarivo, or were killed by the locals. In 1649, a second English colony attempt by Robert Hunt at Asada, present-day Mozambique, also ended with the massacre of the settlers, often by trickery. The Malagasy were very harsh toward Europeans. In 1686, English pirates who came to Mozambique for partying were massacred by the locals because of mistreatment by a previous English crew. The only survivor was Robert Everard, who became a slave to a local king. He only gained his freedom when he was sold to an Arab trader and then resold to an Englishman in Muscat after spending 2 years on the island. France's colonization of Madagascar began in 1642, initiated by Cardinal Richelieu and formalized by letters patent signed by Louis XIII and later confirmed by Louis XIV. The goal was to establish a commercial and strategic outpost in the Indian Ocean to rival British influence. The Company de Lorient was entrusted with the venture. In 1643, the first expedition, led by Prones and Valkenburg, arrived with about 200 settlers. The colony was first established at St. Luce, then moved to Fort Dauphin due to unhealthy conditions. Posts were also briefly opened at Fenerive and Mananara, but all were quickly abandoned because of disease and poor location. From the start, the colony was plagued by mismanagement and cruelty under Prones. He favored his Malagasy wife's extended family by wasting supplies on them while treating French settlers effectively as slaves. In 1646, settlers imprisoned Prones. After 6 months, he was freed and punished the rebels by exile in La Réunion, then Bourbon Island. In a notorious act, Prones sold Malagasy servants, including 16 women of the high caste of Lohavici, to the Dutch governor of Mauritius, Van der Mester, triggering massive outrage among natives. This betrayal violated the generous hospitality of the Malagasy and caused hostility. The Company de Lorient, alarmed by his actions, sent Etienne de Flécourt to replace him. Flécourt returned to France in 1654, and he was killed by Algerian pirates when coming back to Madagascar in 1655. Military raids for supplies started by Flécourt later, continued by his successors, kept the colony in a constant state of war with the natives. The colony suffered greatly. Fort Dauphin burned accidentally in 1655 and was not rebuilt until 1663. When it was re-established, Chamargo was governor. A French named Lacasse, married to a local princess Dienong or Andrianani, once saved the colony by supplying it with foods from their realm of Ambalo. Like happened before with the Portuguese and the English settlers, all neighboring Malagasy chiefs refused food supplies to the fort. This blockade, combined with fever and disease, reduced the number of French settlers. By the early 1670s, the colony at Fort Dauphin was reduced to only 127 French settlers, remnants of the original 4,000 emigrants. Isolated, underprovisioned, and lacking gunpowder, The settlers survived only through marriages with Malagasy noblewomen, a practice initiated by Pronis and continued by later governors, including La Bretèche, who married the daughter of La Caisse and Dien Nong. These marriages provided temporary peace, as Malagasy wives acted as intermediaries between settlers and local communities. However, when Captain de Beauregard arrived, in defiance of orders to go directly to Al Bourbon, he brought with him 16 French women meant for marriage in Bourbon. They demanded to be married in Madagascar instead, pressuring missionaries and the governor. By August 1674, 5 marriages had taken place and more were planned. The arrival of French women deeply offended the Malagasy wives, who had long held authority in the colony. Their resentment led them to withdraw their protection. On 27 August 1674, French colonists were mercilessly massacred by the natives. The colony was doomed. Luckily, a company ship, the Blanc-Pignon, appeared, and La Bretèche organized an emergency evacuation. On September 9, 1674, 63 survivors boarded the ship, abandoning Fort Dauphin. They spiked the cannons, burned the supplies, and left the settlement behind. From about 1774 to 1824, Madagascar gained prominence among pirates and European traders, particularly those involved in the transatlantic slave trade. The small island of Nosy Borja, Île Sainte-Marie, off the northeastern coast of Madagascar, is believed to be where the English pirate Henry Every founded his kingdom and reigned as pirate king or emperor. Antananarivo Bay, Diego Suarez Bay, in northern Madagascar, is rumored to be the site where the French pirate Misson founded his legendary pirate utopia, Libertalia. Many European sailors were shipwrecked on the coasts of the island, among them Robert Drury, whose journal is one of the few written depictions of life in southern Madagascar during the 18th century. European accounts until the early 20th century identified Malagasy people as being of Jewish origin. The wealth generated by maritime trade spurred the rise of organized kingdoms on the island, some of which had grown quite powerful by the 17th century. Among these were the Betsimisaraka alliance of the eastern coast and the Sokolova chiefdoms of Menabe and Boina on the west coast. The kingdom of Merina, located in the central highlands with its capital at the royal palace of Antananarivo, emerged at around the same time under the leadership of King Andriamanelo. Thanks for watching. Please comment and subscribe if you enjoyed.